I will inherit the $330,000 inheritance in this house since I'm his wife. I won't give it to you. On the day of my son's funeral, his wife boldly stated this in front of all the relatives. The relatives, seated and listening to her story, were taken aback by her words. They nearly laughed because the eldest son's wife seemed to know nothing. She wasn't even aware of the double life led by her son, who was a prominent lawyer. Everyone felt pity for the son who had married such a woman. The relatives were taken aback by her audacious words. Yet she seemed oblivious to their shocked expressions and muttered, "Now I'll be rich." She's mistaken if she thinks everything will go her way that easily. Struggles are a part of everything. I need to teach her that as a mother-in-law and as the mother of her son. My name is Julia, a housewife in my 60s. I've been living alone since my husband passed away. Together we used to run a company. While we were both busy with work, our son, whom we nurtured with care, started living on his own a few years ago after getting married. Living alone after several decades turned out to be lonelier and harder than I thought. What kept me going was the frequent visits from my son and his wife. When they had a child, they brought the baby over to show me. They often visit, so my grandchild has grown fond of me. I looked forward to giving my grandchild a Christmas gift every year, loving him dearly. After my husband's death, my son and his wife considerately moved closer to my place. I told them they didn't need to go that far, but when my son said, "Mom, you're getting older. We're worried. Dad would be worried about you too," I felt it would be ungracious not to accept their kindness, so I ended up relying on my son and his wife. To be honest, Emily, my son's wife, didn't seem too pleased with the current situation. However, even though I'm her mother-in-law, I felt it was not my place to interfere in their relationship. I feared it might make things worse, so I kept silent. In retrospect, I think my lukewarm response wasn't the best approach. Julia, don't you think it's time to stop? Do you enjoy monopolizing someone else's husband? Don't you feel guilty at all? One day while I was relaxing at home, I got a message from Emily saying she has something to discuss. Shortly after, she came to visit. I had previously asked her not to drop by without notice, but Emily countered with, "If I try to schedule, you'll decline, won't you?" She never informed me in advance. When she suddenly visited like this, she would unleash harsh words that she wouldn't normally say. There was a reason why Emily would come without making an appointment and alone. In front of my son and grandchild, she plays the part of a good mother who gets along with her mother-in-law. In front of them, Emily is a very kind person. If I need help with something, she actively assists. She's concerned about my health and even shares the food she makes with me. However, that's just her outward demeanor. Inside, Emily's true feelings are so dark, she wouldn't dare show them. Whether she generally dislikes me or not, she has often made hurtful remarks like, "Don't be so bossy when you can't do anything," or "Don't deceive my husband." Even relying on my son's kindness seemed to irritate Emily, as she once lashed out, saying, "You're so bad at reading between the lines." Emily, if something bothers you so much, you can say it right there and then. If I know you dislike it, I'll try to avoid doing it. Do you really not understand how people feel? In front of my husband and child, do you think I can say those things? Can't you at least sense when something might be unpleasant for others? I'm not a mind reader, you know. I try my best not to upset Emily. When accepting kindness from my son, I always consider whether it might upset Emily. Despite my careful considerations, my every move seems to annoy her. Ever since my son and Emily moved closer, the frequency of her visits to complain about me has markedly increased. It seems she even resents the fact they moved near my home. When she said, "Even though we finally had a child, you just keep getting in our way," I was deeply shocked. If she's so bothered, she should just clearly say so. If she did, neither I nor my son would force anything on her. Yet instead of doing so, she pretends to be fine in the moment, saying, "I think it's okay," only to complain to me afterwards. This way, she probably doesn't feel good herself either. I wish wish she'd choose an easier way to live. However, my feelings never seemed to reach her. My relationship with Emily is terrible. Still, as a mother-in-law, I constantly wondered if I couldn't find some way to bridge the gap. One day, a deeply shocking event occurred. I heard that my son had fallen ill. Informed by Emily, I rushed to the hospital where he was to be admitted. There, a man introduced himself as the attending physician and explained my son's condition in detail. My son's illness was quite severe. While it wasn't untreatable, it wasn't a disease you could confidently say was non-life-threatening either. Undoubtedly, the treatment costs would be substantial. Upon hearing this, Emily turned pale.
Is there no cure for this illness? We need him to work. He needs to recover quickly and get back to work.
Emily, please. Even in such a situation, Emily was preoccupied with my son's job. She always seemed very concerned about his work. My son runs a small law firm as a lawyer. Initially, the firm had few cases and employees, but he steadily built its reputation, and now the business has grown considerably. Emily always boasted about my son during family gatherings, even though it wasn't about her. For her, my son's profession was a tool to one-up others in society. That's probably why she's so anxious, knowing that our son won't be able to work.
Emily, it's not the time to be worried about his job. Let's be patient. He will recover in time. It's easy for you to say. What value does such a person have without a job? How will we manage the finances? I need my husband to earn more for us.
Emily, enough is enough. What do you think of our son? He's the one suffering from the illness. Can't you even wish for him to rest? Unable to bear her utter selfishness, I snapped at her, only to be calmed by the doctor saying, Now, let's all calm down. How can one stay calm knowing their son is in such distress? Moreover, having to listen to her cruel words made it even more unbearable. It would be strange if I kept quiet. From that day on, our son was hospitalized for a while. I visited him every day, but Emily never once came to visit him. Undoubtedly, our son felt lonely not being able to see her or his child. I told her to visit him, but my words fell on deaf ears. For a long time, our son endured the treatments. He wanted to recover and see his family again, and I continuously supported him. But despite all the treatments, a few months after his diagnosis, we lost him. The days that followed felt hectic, yet seemed to drag on forever. I was burned out after our son's death. My sister helped with the funeral preparations, and somehow we managed to conduct it. There was a photo of our son with his bright smile at the ceremony. A smile I'd never see again. The indescribable sense of loss was so profound, I couldn't even shed a tear. On the day of the funeral, I was greeted by his subordinates. Our son was truly kind and caring, and it seemed he was deeply loved by those he worked with. Countless people were crying, more than I could count on my fingers. So many mourned the loss of my son. Once the funeral settled down, Emily approached me, saying, Julia, what's wrong? It must be tough for you too. Don't push yourself.
No, I just wanted to talk.
Talk? What about?
It's about my husband's inheritance.
Inheritance? Emily seemed eager to say something. However, discussing inheritance during a funeral isn't appropriate. As I tried to listen, seemingly impatient, she blurted out,
I'll inherit the $330,000 and this house, being his wife. I won't hand any of it over to you.
What? Hearing her voice, the attendees turned their attention to us. Whispers filled the air, making the atmosphere even more uncomfortable.
You wanted the inheritance, didn't you? Unfortunately, it's all mine,
she proudly declared, seemingly oblivious to the surroundings. Unbelievable. On the day of my dear son's funeral, to be told such things. I couldn't lift my head, feeling so dejected. But then a helping hand was extended to me. Excuse me, Emily, do you even know what you're talking about? The one addressing her was a woman in charge of accounting at my son's law firm. Several of my son's colleagues also gathered around, chuckling at her.
What are you talking about? Did I say something wrong?
Wrong? Everything you said is laughable, don't you think? She turned to me with a smirk. Emily, not understanding why she was being mocked, looked increasingly upset.
Julia, are you still hiding something? Hiding things even now? You're truly spiteful.
I wasn't hiding anything. I assumed you already knew.
So, what are you talking about? Why is everyone laughing? I don't understand.
It seemed that Emily was genuinely unaware of the situation. Despite her confusion, my son's colleagues only continued to chuckle, offering no answers.
Why don't you just tell her? She really looks pitiful, you know.
The female colleague commented with a laugh. Indeed, it felt wrong for her to be in the dark about such a crucial matter. Thus, I decided to reveal the truth that she was oblivious to. The truth is, our son had debt.
Debt? Why? I heard nothing about this.
As I suspected, she was completely unaware of it. In reality, when our son established his law firm, my husband and I lent him approximately $400,000. Even though we've since retired, the business we used to run was thriving, and we had sufficient funds. If we knew our son was facing financial difficulties, we wouldn't hesitate to help him. He promised to repay us over time. Although he managed to pay back $130,000, a remaining $270,000 is yet to be settled. Hearing this, the color drained from her face. She clearly hadn't expected such significant debt from her husband. You did say earlier that you'd inherit all of our son's assets, didn't you? I asked to confirm. However, she hesitated to nod in agreement.
I don't need the inheritance. It's fine, please.
She desperately refuted, but since everyone present heard her initial claim of inheriting everything, there was no escaping the truth. If you're saying you'll inherit our son's assets, you'll also inherit his debt, right?
What? I can't afford to pay $270,000. Please, aren't we family? Families help each other out in times of crisis, don't they?
Her demeanor shifted entirely, and she began to grovel. Up until now, she had done nothing but belittle me. Moreover, she treated our son's matters dismissively. Perhaps due to the accumulated anger I felt, I couldn't bring myself to forgive Emily any longer. Despite Emily being the one who hasn't treated us as family, I couldn't help but feel offended when she suddenly put on a facade of familial ties. I'm sorry, but everyone here heard you say that you would inherit the estate. Everyone here will be a witness.
Why?
Really, sometimes you just don't think things through. Shouldn't you be more discerning about who you should treat respectfully? After all, you're an adult too.
Please don't say that. It's between me and you, right? Please help me. If things continue like this,
Emily's face was more distorted than I had ever seen before. She probably feared what the future held for her. However, the people present backed me up.
It's unbelievable that she would say something like that after her husband passed away.
From somewhere in the hall, that voice echoed. Then one after the other, voices criticizing Emily began to emerge.
Don't forgive such a cold-blooded beast.
I feel so sorry for her late husband.
The entire hall was filled with insults directed at Emily. She began to tremble, probably not expecting to face such backlash. Perhaps she was convinced that her side of the story was justified and that she shouldn't be blamed.
Why is everyone siding with Julia? I've tried my best too. I am his wife. Why does Julia get all the good things?
Emily shouted angrily and crouched down. No one reached out to her. Take a moment and reflect on yourself. Not mourning someone's death, only thinking about money, and not caring about others' feelings. People aren't foolish enough to support someone like that. I felt so out of place that I had to leave. One of my son's colleagues followed me out of concern, but I felt relieved. Later on, Emily did inherit my son's estate, as she declared. However, there was hardly any inheritance left, and most of it was debt. She had to work tirelessly to pay it back. As Emily had no time to care for her child, my grandchild was left in our care.
Please, Julia, forgive my debt.
Time and again, Emily would come to our house, begging me in desperation. However, I steadfastly refused. I couldn't forget what happened back then. I had lost my dear son, and yet Emily behaved in such a way. Even when my son was ill, she never visited him once in the hospital. He must have felt lonely, not being able to see his wife or child. With that in mind, I just couldn't bring myself to forgive Emily. As time passed, my grandchild spent more time with me and, before I knew it, became more attached to me than to Emily, his biological mother. He began saying he wanted to be with Grandma, no matter what we did. I remember how shocked Emily was by this. While I think I am the worst, this was my small act of revenge. She took my son from me, so I took something back. Although my days feel empty, they are somewhat fulfilling. My grandson has started elementary school, and when he needs something, we often go shopping together. I have no intention of forgiving Emily's debt, but I don't mind spending money for my grandson. Fortunately, the profits from when I ran a company are still plentiful. I intend to use this money solely for my grandson's benefit. My greatest hope is that when it's my turn to follow my husband and son to heaven, my beloved grandson will be there to see me off.